Hey guys, well, this is Dan again. This is part 3 of our M08 TCS setup video. This will be the final video on this. You probably should have seen my 2 other videos by now. So this is just going to talk more on fine tuning and hop-up options. So yeah, let's get into it. If you've been in the Tamiya game for a while, you know, the best deal is always to buy the R version of the M08. So that'll save you the most money. You know how Tamiya does things. They release the basic model like what I got here. And then they make you buy the upgrades over time. So that's kind of how they get you. But this is pretty much upgraded to R spec plus some. So yeah, just kind of go over things kind of briefly. Yeah, so on this car, you'll kind of see a common theme. I got aluminum screws here. I've got a very lightweight ESC. This is the XR10 Pro stock spec. I think this is the early one, so I think there's a G2 version out now. Using a plastic case servo, and then just on the receiver and transponder on the other side. So unfortunately with the M08, it is very unbalanced weight-wise. So it's hard to kind of try to get everything even left and right. So the idea behind getting kind of like as much weight on the top of the car as much as possible is because you want to get the CG very low. And that's going to help tremendously on carpet. So you may have seen some of the guys I race with. You may have seen sometimes I had a brass plate under my battery. This is like the Tamiya 55 gram plate. It's been doing this setup for a long time. Essentially gets the weight as down low as much as possible. And also I have some weights down here. It's a tungsten weight, and I think these are tungsten or steel. Kind of a common trick. The M08 has a nice slot down here. If you put it in the long wheelbase, you actually extend it and get like another slot. It's also very common with the TA08 guys with the V-shaped chassis where they're placing weights underneath. It just helps a lot with the lower CG, and that will make the cornering a little bit faster too. So yeah, I won't go into too many details on the other upgrades. They're all in my other videos for suspension, tires, and diff. So I'll just kind of go through some of the other things which I think is worth it or not. Like I said before, Tamiya hop-ups, they can nickel and dime you quite a bit, and you could easily end up with like a $500 M08. And but there's ways to buy the critical stuff that you need, and then there's some stuff that are nice to have but don't really make a big performance difference. So this is kind of like the crack addict telling you to lay low on the drugs, but I admit I think I need an intervention with buying all these blue aluminum hop-ups. Anyways, we'll go from the front part to the rear. So you see, I have quite a bit of number of upgrades. First, the bumper support in carbon. No, you do not need that at all. The carbon towers, front and rear, they're nice to have, but they're not really necessary, to be honest. One thing I did have was, you see the steering rack, and I actually bought the blue aluminum steering rack parts, and I was pretty disappointed with them because they had a tremendous amount of slop. I know there's ways to kind of remove the slop, but it was all mostly in the bearings. So this is common with other people I've seen have reported the aluminum hop-up actually has more slop than the plastic one. So I actually have the carbon reinforced version rack right here, and it reduced the slop, and yeah, and I can't really feel any difference between that and the aluminum. So this car is pretty notorious for having a lot of slop. I did keep the aluminum center bridge. This one you can see it's lets you adjust the Ackerman, whereas the stock plastic unit, the ball stud is mounted on kind of vertically, I would say, whereas on this it's horizontal. Next you see these blue aluminum stand-up posts. You don't really need it, to be honest. You definitely want to get this piece in aluminum right here. The stock plastic one can actually flex. The aluminum cover, you don't need it. I just bought it because it kind of looks cool, but doesn't really do a whole lot. What I actually recommend is these Tamiya servo savers. They're notorious for kind of getting out of whack over time. So like if you have a hit with your car, it may not fully return to back where it was. This is more prevalent in the larger touring cars, but in the minis is almost as heavy as a touring car. So I would recommend buying the Tamiya high torque servo saver set once every couple years. Replace it with the new plastic, the new springs, and then just carry over your aluminum horn. All right. You'll also see that I have the plastic piece here. Actually, this is the carbon reinforced one. It's actually pretty stiff, to be honest. I do have the aluminum one too. It allows you to mount a 25mm fan. But I found with these new rules with the 22 pinion and the new motor, it runs pretty cool. So at least in a 5 or 6 minute main, you'll be going in. Obviously, with a higher ambient temp, you're gonna definitely want to run a fan. Just something to keep in mind. So we'll move on to the gotta talk about these. You definitely want to get these battery holders. These come stock on the R kits. Otherwise, I think it's labeled as a TCO1 option part. And the reason I say to get this to replace the plastic ones is the plastic ones, they kind of hang pretty low on the bottom. And it's normal when you're running a low ride height setup on the M08, you're gonna get a lot of rub on the bottom plastic battery holder. So this elevates things and you're not gonna scrub at all. So highly recommend getting that option. Going into gearbox, you can't see it, but Tamiya does make aluminum shafts that holds the counter gear and idler gear. You do not need to get those. They don't really do anything other than lightening up the gearbox a few grams. But it's not rotational mass, so not necessary at all. You can save some bucks there. I also recommend buying their hard anodized pinion. Out of the box for the basic kits, they come with this very soft aluminum pinion. And over time, the teeth can get pretty sharp, and then it ends up kind of doing a lot of damage on the spur gear and gears on this car. So, and you guys know from working on this car, it's kind of a pain to get to the gearbox and to swap that out. So, spend $5 or $7 at this cost. It will last a very long time. It's usually a goldish bronze color. And I think they come stock on the the 7 and the 8R kits. So, and it's a 22, so it's exactly what you need. Kind of going back to the servo saver, you can to opt for a solid horn to be TCS legal. This is the Tamiya version right here. 42248 for Futaba. I had a little PTSD a few years ago when I ran a direct horn on my F1 and broke a very, very expensive servo. So I do still run a servo saver, but with these slower speeds now, and if it's a big open track with not a lot of hard barriers, I probably would opt for the solid horn. So, all right. Let's see what else we got here. We got this in carbon. You do not need to spend the money on this at all. Next, you're gonna see I have these very hard to find, very expensive aluminum hubs. I will say you could save the 50 or 60 bucks that it'll cost and not get these. I didn't find any performance difference at all switching from the plastic to the aluminum, but I will say I've seen maybe 2 people in, I don't know, I'd say like 7 or 8 years that actually broke a plastic hub. And on my backup M08, I did for a while run it with the carbon reinforced hub, plastic hub. And, you know, it worked great. It weighs less. I didn't have any issues with the handling. Handle very similar. And yeah, I didn't have any issues with breakage as well. So the only reason to get the aluminum ones is if you want to play with kind of the camber links as far as the length and the height of it to the ball stud out here. But overall, again, with these slower speeds, I don't think breakage will be much of an issue. So you could save a lot of money just by sticking with the plastic rear hub. Yeah, and then if you can, just get the carbon reinforced version. They work pretty good. Let me go grab my wrench. I want to show another part too. So I'm going to take off the front wheel because there's an option I really like on this one. So I think it was a couple of years ago, Tamiya came out with these one-piece hub axle. I like these a lot because they, I mean, not only are they a few grams lighter, but they also have, they reduce a lot of the slop in the front end. And I was a little concerned since they were aluminum, you know, just the whole axle hub all in one. But actually they've been holding up pretty good. So I really like these options, just anything to kind of reduce the heavy amount of slop on the Tamiya. If you already don't want to spend that money, then I recommend running the 6mm aluminum hub in the front. You could buy these in different sizes. Before this option came out, I was running the 6mm in the front. And on the rear hub, actually don't run a 6mm. I used to, but it made the rear quite a bit wide. So right now I'm running the 3.5. That way I could play with spacers to widen the rear if I want. So I think how I have it right now is 3.5 plus a 0.5mm spacer. So basically a 4mm hub. Yeah, they make these in 3.5, 4mm, 5mm, and then the 6mm in the silver. I think that's about it. as far as what's on the chassis. So body choices, you can see I have a little collection here. This is actually not everything. A few years ago, I tested out a lot of bodies, thinking I was going to go into nationals, into mini, but ended up switching to GT2. So the long wheelbase I had on my backup M08. I ran the Nissan S13 body. Unfortunately, I don't have it here right now because I sold the car, but it was a body that I liked a lot. Kind of heavy, but it was low profile and the handling was very good. A trick I did with the long wheelbase was, since this front end is stretched, I was able to mount this ESC right on the floor over here. I think I had just one weight on the bottom and then I placed the ESC right in the middle. And I had a super low center of gravity. Just made the car so much easier to drive. But unfortunately, in the end, the availability of mini bodies, there aren't too many great options in long wheelbase. I have the old RX-7 right there, which I also liked a lot. That is the GR Yaris. This one's the lightweight long wheelbase hatchback one. It's okay. It was relatively neutral handling, but ultimately I like the Nissan S13 better. Those are much harder to find, but they were all over Japan when I was there the other year. These are probably my two favorite bodies for mini right here. You got the old school Miata, the Unos Roadster, and then the widely available MX-5 ND Miata. So highly recommend either of these bodies. I did feel like the Unos Roadsters, if you could find it, this one right here, seemed to be a little more nimble, and then the MX-5 ND, this one's a very neutral body. Like it quite a bit. It's my